Right, good morning everyone. First thing I thought was if more people could come and sit near the front, it'd look much better on the camera that's over here as well. Be a little bit more intimate. So yeah, I think the first place for me to start is we're going to talk about what makes an Ustwo games game. And it's worth pointing out as well how kind of like alien we are in this kind of context, because I'm not about to show you any graphs or very numbers at all. Only one of the slides has actually got numbers on it. And what I want to do is tell you how we do things. In the absence of all that kind of stuff, what's important to us. So can I just have a quick show of hands? Does anyone, how many people here actually know who Ustwo games are? Because I'll know to give context. Okay, cool. Roughly about half of the people here. Cool. So where I'm going to start as well is just a really quick introduction to me. I know it's quite a short talk in this, but my name's Dan Gray. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Ustwo Games, and I've been here for about 7 years now. Previous to that, I was working in console games, so I was at Hello Games, and I was at Lionhead before that as well, working on Fable. So I used to be CEO before this, and I used to be executive producer when we did Monument Valley 1. So I'm fortunate enough to be in this kind of really interesting middle ground where I have had a foot in the business side of things and the creative side of things for the last 7 years. So I'm not necessarily just talking about the creative and ignoring all the rest of the stuff when I say all this. So, as I said, Ustwo Games existed for about, I would say about 10 years by this point, and I've been here for about 7. Some of the things we've made have been Monument Valley 1, which you see in the top left. We followed that up a few years later with Monument Valley 2. We made a VR game called Land's End, which is in the bottom left of that as well. Just when the Gear VR first came out, wanted to have a first step into VR. And Assemble with Care, which came out this year as well. So we've had a good selection of stuff in the last 7 years. And the kind of things that have been important to us are that of kind of quality and surprise and intrigue. We worked on Land's End in VR because we felt our strength was in UX and onboarding for casual audience, especially when it comes to more kind of, I don't know, hardcore game elements. So for us to jump onto VR and try and get that my first VR experience right was really important to us. Of course, it wasn't going to make us a ton of money, but we thought kind of broadening our horizons after putting so much of ourselves into Monument Valley was going to be a big thing. And to set some of that context as well, it isn't just about making beautiful games. The thing I'm trying to get across as well is that the way that we follow things, we've been lucky enough to win a load of awards for the things that we've done. We've managed to get really highly rated games in that course of time as well. And we've managed to turn a really good profit for a team of our size. We're like 30 people now. We were 8 when we made Monument Valley, so we've only scaled from 8 to 30 in the last 7 years as well. And also we've been fortunate enough, this isn't updated, but we've been fortunate enough to be on a lot of partner keynotes in that time as well. Like we're ever present when it comes to like, especially Apple, but also Google, and we've been on some Facebook stuff and a lot of other stuff as well. So for us, these are the kind of objectives that we have. And Ustwo really comes from we're like a game studio amongst an umbrella of companies, the majority of the kind of headcount of which is like a client-facing digital product design studio. Just kind of you can see where a lot of our DNA comes from, marrying that with the game space. So can anyone tell me who this incredibly sexy man is? Anybody? Exactly, right. So one thing that is always interesting about KFC is, I'm pretty sure it's still a secret, but they have these secret 11 herbs and spices about how they do things, right? And people always try to figure it out, trying to get that exact flavor right. And because Monument Valley 1 was a big success a number of years ago, we see a lot of games kind of crop up on the marketplace trying to take what was there. But in my opinion, you know, the blueprint has been there for somebody to copy that, and it's not quite worked. And it's because no one quite knows what the hidden 11 herbs and spices are. So part of this next 10 minutes is going to be me trying my best to articulate that. Also, this is from a KFC dating sim that you should definitely check out because it's really good. So to kind of recap on this, a big kind of like header theme for why Ustwo Games exists in the first place is that we really want to bring what's meaningful about games to everybody. The best way for me to explain that is, as people who play console games and more hardcore games, we get to experience all these things like caring about a character or adventuring and exploring a world that you've never known before, or just, you know, about relationships or meaning and all these things that we do. But in the mobile space, that's hardly existent at all. Like, and I think, I find that quite sad. Like, the majority of the space is based around, you know, gacha games, match 3 games, base builders. And to me, it's, you know, it's like the majority of people who are into movies are only watching comedies. You know, there's so much more to music that we all experience. There's so much more to movies that we all experience. But in the game space, for the majority of a casual audience, that's actually quite narrow. And I want to try and bring as much as that as possible and wrap it up into a package that a casual person is going to want to engage with. So again, everything we do needs to bring what's meaningful to everyone and treat those people with respect and get the onboarding and get the UX correct. So really it kind of comes down to 4 pillars that I find very important that goes into everything that we do. So number 1 on that is built by humans. So an Ustwo game should be brimming with personality. It should feel handcrafted and zeitgeist creating, not zeitgeist following. There's a reason why Monument Valley was successful when we did that, and we've been fortunate enough to have success since then. It's because we created something that wasn't already out there, right? And because we're small and we're independently owned and we're not published and we're not anything else, we have the freedom to do things exactly the way that we want to do them. So we should lean into that. So we do that by keeping our team sizes small. Every single time we try and aim to only have 8 people, and it always ends up being 12 people or so. But we're working on 3 games at the moment with this 30 people. It's probably going to raise to about 35 or so. But trying to keep the team sizes small so that every person on that team is personally invested in the thing they make, and they feel like they have the freedom to suggest things and change things. It's important that all people can be in a meeting room and actually influence what's there. Because if we have the freedom to inject our personality into something, that's what's going to make us unique in that marketplace. So we also try and do that by taking inspiration from personal experiences and interests outside of video games. So anyone who's ever seen anything about the making of any of the games we've done, whether it be Assemble with Care or Land's End or either of the Monument Valley games, we've really tried to put in kind of life experiences. Like Monument Valley 2's story was based around parenthood. It's no surprising that between Monument Valley 1 and Monument Valley 2, a number of the team had children, and we're thinking very much about this. And we were trying to think about what kind of things we could inject into that game that weren't present in game stories right now as well. And because of that kind of freedom and the independence and everyone being in the same room, we can take risks to create the unexpected, but also have the patience to get it right. You know, if we feel it isn't quite there, we'll extend it by 3 months. We'll take the time. Maybe we'll hire a couple of more people onto that team, which is why it goes from 8 to 12 sometimes. But really, yeah, taking risks on both people, but also subject matter. So things like Assemble with Care, for example, we were really leaning into things about the kind of handy person repair space. It was a game about a repair woman who found herself in a town for the first time, and wanted to repair things that were there. So the kind of eco side of repairing what you have, both the physical and the emotional, but also taking things from like 1989 fashion, like Monument Valley 2 was a lot based around kind of theatre and poetry and obviously different types of architecture. And that's what gives us our kind of special edge, I believe, is leaning into the human side of things. Number 2 on that is player-centric, which is an incredibly general, very overused term in this. And I guess this is more to shield us from the indie space than it is, say, the usual free-to-play mobile space. Our games exist to give players a memory that will last a lifetime. We create experiences for our players and not just for ourselves. Now, I think in a lot of the free-to-play space, you know, when you see all the graphs and you see the demographics, I think it's really down the end of the spectrum about what the players want, what the players are engaging with. It's really data-driven. And in the kind of really independent developer space, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like, I really want to make this thing because it's a personal expression of mine and I think it's cool. We really want to kind of marry the best of both of those worlds. So we do that by trusting in extensive user testing and iteration, which has come from our heritage as a product design studio, by respecting players' time and money, and by being approachable to non-gamers. So when we say by respecting players' time and money, of course this is completely personal to us and how we want to make games, but we really want to create something that is short and impactful. We don't want to take our enjoyment and spread that out over weeks and weeks and weeks, which is kind of funny when you see our kind of retention numbers and it's like 1 day, never played again, right? But the thing about that is that they had a brilliant time in that 24 hours that they had. And for us, it's more about the depth of impact than it is the length of that impact. And again, by being approachable to non-gamers, which brings into that kind of visual reference and the inspiration about how we make things. And another important one is that we want to do this with pride. An Ustwo games release should make players, creators, and partners feel proud of their involvement. So what does this mean for the kind of three stakeholders that we're thinking about at all times? It means we need to support the teams to create the best work of their careers. Again, giving them like best-in-class like benefits, studio space, support, making sure they've got everything around there, making sure they're listened. Because if we manage to make them feel supported and listened to, we will get the best work out of them. And that one idea that comes up in a meeting will be golden. And it's not just golden from like a fun creative sense, it'll be golden from a business and money-making sense. We want to give the players as that second stakeholder something they want to share with other people, something they feel like they had really good value out of. We want to make sure that their time with our game isn't just a distraction while they're waiting for a bus. We want to make sure that we impact them in a way where they say, hey, do you want to look at this? It's almost like a magic trick. It's like, hey, look at this cool thing. That's how we do this without, you know, paying for user acquisition. Which, as a reminder, we do paid games, as you hadn't guessed. And the third part of that is having partners proud to use us to promote their products or service. It's a really key thing for our marketing is that, you know, because we are a small company, we really, really rely on these really strong partnerships between, say, Apple and Google. If we make things that are beautiful and things that are unique and things that appeal to an audience that a lot of people don't do, we're going to be on that stage, we're going to be on that keynote, and we're going to be talked about. That's our strategy around making sure these three pillars of the team, the players, and the partners are all hit. And the fourth of that is games with meaning, which is kind of in that overall term of bringing what's meaningful about games to everyone. So we aim to change the casual audience's perception of games as a valid form of emotional entertainment. My partner works in the world of books. And many people, when they want to be impacted by something or they want to really sink their teeth into something that's going to move them, a lot of a casual audience go to books or they go to movies or they'll go to television, but they don't currently go to games. Gamers go there. Gamers will go and love to play The Last of Us on their PlayStation, but casual players don't do that. And I think that's a really kind of ripe part for us to move into. So we do that by telling stories we feel aren't being told in video games. Like I mentioned before about telling the story of motherhood and that of independence after having a child and finding your own way, or that of repairing the things you have instead of just buying stuff off Amazon all the time, which is kind of the theme of the second game. By leaving players with a clear and simple message. What I mean by that is a lot of the times I think about what we do as almost like fables. Right? They still need to be fun. They need to be intriguing from the get-go, but they need to leave the player with a clear message. Again, to use another analogy, it's almost like nutritious food, you know? Like we want to leave them with something that has value to their body and not just something that they're going to eat because they're hungry. I know I'm going all over the place with these analogies, but the third part of this is by Trojan horsing that message behind immediately intriguing gameplay. So I believe that if we upfronted this and we said, hey, do you really want to play a meaningful game, Mrs. Casual? Do you really want to play something with a really intriguing story? Most people feel like that's too much of an investment upfront, right? They'll go, doesn't really seem like me. It seems like a gamer's thing. So it's really important that we suck people in with the visuals, with the graphic design of what's there, with the music, with a really interesting key mechanic. Like the example in Monument Valley is that of, you know, there is the first level, and the only thing you have is a character on a white piece of architecture. And the first thing you move creates an impossible pathway. And again, using the magic trick analogy, it's like, wow, okay, I'm in. We don't care about feeding them story yet. It's about getting them in there with intriguing gameplay and then making them care about those characters and the setting later on. I feel it's really important. So again, to reiterate those things, the four pillars that we build around everything that we do is we want things to feel like they were built by humans, not algorithms. We want to make sure that we're listening to players and not just being these artistic auteurs who just do whatever they want. We want to make sure that everyone involved with the making or playing or selling of this game is proud of what we've made. And we want everything involved here to be with meaning. So hopefully that's a really quick run through of kind of like the 11 herbs and spices of what goes into an Ustwo Games game. Hopefully some of this is applicable to what you do and you can pick different things out of it. Or maybe this is the kind of stuff you're already doing and you just want to see someone else's opinion on how they do things. So yeah, the things that come out of this are our team have incredibly high engagement scores. Our retention of team, which is more important to us than retention of players, is super high and people really love being here and they stay with us for a long time. Our values are desirable for platform partners to be associated with. With such high content saturation, we genuinely create things that are unique within that space and we pursue our strengths and don't chase the ball. It's like, we always get asked all the time, it's like, God, you guys do such cool visuals. Why don't you do something that's free to play or hyper casual? And it's like, We can't just keep jumping around trying to aim for whatever the next hot thing is. Like, we know what the team we have are good at, and we would rather be amazing at that one thing that we do than constantly jumping around on what the next hot thing is. So yeah, it's really important for us. And that's it. I'm sure we've got time for questions. We've got 5 minutes. Anybody? Yeah.
Do you think you'll be going back to making in VR?
I'd really love to. Like, I took the Quest home at Christmas. There were so many good things that I was playing. And it's really interesting, but it hasn't necessarily progressed at the rate I thought it would do since when we made Land's End, we were like, God, this is the future. This is going to be such high market saturation at this point. And it hasn't quite gone that way that I would like. But from a design perspective and just an intriguing challenge perspective, I'd really love to come back to it. I'd really, really love to come back to it. Yeah. Any more? Right, wicked. Thank you very much.